Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Poema podcast. I am James Prescott, your host. Welcome back to the show. Really great to have you all here again. Really grateful you're all here. And today I have a returning guest, a very good friend of mine, one of my best friends in the world. And she is autistic, and she's coming here to tell her autistic story. So, MJ, welcome back to the show.
Woohoo!
It's good to
Thanks so
have you
much.
here. No, it's great to have you. It's always great to have you on the show. Yeah, and always good to hear from you. Yeah, so we've been talking. We had a few episodes on autism already this year, and I thought it'd be cool to actually hear from somebody who's recently gone through the process of getting diagnosed and coming to terms with their autism and living with it and how it affects them. And MJ said that she'd be willing to do that. So we're going to hear from MJ today, and it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, and I guess to start with, where did this process all start in terms of wanting a diagnosis and thinking that you may need one?
Sure, yeah. I would say it started within this past year. About a year and a half ago, honestly, I've really identified as neurodivergent or neurospicy for well over a few years now, but not as autistic. And it was actually you, James, who helped me begin to think of myself potentially as autistic, particularly because of some of the traits that you see within yourself and saw within me within our friendship. I also had followed a number of autistic content creators online, on TikTok, on Twitter, and a lot of their experiences resonated as true for me. Not in a pick and choose cafeteria style way. So, not just saying that's true for me, that's not. And so I'm just hearing what I want to hear. But really, 95% of what I'm hearing is true. And so I really want to learn about this more. And the other major thing was that I had gone through years, and I do mean well over a decade of therapy for panic and post traumatic stress disorders. And those therapies were very helpful to me, but they had yet to fully address this ongoing struggle with the environment around me
Hmm.
and the environment within me. And I just wasn't sure if I wasn't finding the right therapy or if there was something else going on. And when I heard these lived stories of people who were diagnosed or self-diagnosed as autistic, I was like, that feels like that feels like what's going on for me. That could be true for me. So that kind of kicked off that journey for me in wanting to get a diagnosis. I would love to know for you a little bit what started your journey of self-diagnosis and where you're at so far.
Well, okay, yeah, that's interesting. I can tell you that. I must have started about 10 years ago. I think my sister worked in her 20s, worked in mental health. She worked with autistic people a lot, in her day-to-day work. So she became a bit of an expert on autistic people and what autism is. Uh, and I subsequently found out actually that even since I was about 9 years old, she'd noticed that I was different
Mm,
in how I interact with people, so picking up social cues and a lot of different things, which of course she didn't know was autism at the time, but obviously turned out to be autism. And so she was telling me this, and I didn't dismiss it. I kind of took it on board, but I didn't do much about it. And then another close friend of mine, who I trust a lot, uh, is very very smart guy, has said to me like, "Yeah, you've got a lot of traits of autism. You
mm,
might be on the spectrum." And And that's when I started to do a bit of research and started to, as autistic people do, hyper focus on learning everything about autism I could, and and then actually there was I was in my previous job. I arranged a meeting with occupational health.
Mm,
Now they couldn't give me a formal diagnosis, but they assessed me and they said that it was highly likely that I had autism.
yeah.
And although they were technically, clinically qualified, they weren't, because of the position they held. They weren't allowed to give me a diagnosis. They weren't my doctor, right? They were just a company occupational health person. But they said that they thought I was on the spectrum, and then my therapist also agreed with that as well.
Mm,
That is, although I haven't got a formal diagnosis, I'm working on one now. It takes a long time in this country because
yeah.
it can take up to 2-3 years even in this country. I submitted my application nearly 2 years ago, and I know they still have it because I've checked. It's just
Mm,
taking a long time. Uh, I've also applied to get diagnosed with ADHD because I think I have that as well. So yeah, so that was kind of my journey, and I kind of self-diagnosed. I think probably around 2018, 2019, something like that.
mhm.
I can't actually remember exactly when it was, but it became really clear to me that that was what it was, and it explained so much
Yeah.
of who I was and why I was like I was, and why I would get tired at parties and why I didn't like why I felt uncomfortable in social situations, uh, and why I didn't always pick up the same things that other people did,
Yep.
and why I would get hyper focused on something, or why I would
Check,
play
check, check,
meltdown,
check, check,
like
check.
completely irrationally. It was like, oh yeah, yeah, exactly. It was like that. Oh yeah, yeah. That's pretty much me. So, it really and it helped, and knowing that helped me connect with myself a lot more. I
Yeah.
was doing embodiment work at the same time, so I was doing a lot of work at communicating with my body and listening to my body,
Mm,
and that helped as well. So yeah, that's really kind of how that all happened,
yeah.
and and I have a family member who has been diagnosed now as well, and knowing that
Mhm,
autism can pass through the family, uh, that explains it even more. So,
mhm.
uh, yeah, that's it. That's really my journey, and I'm really glad. I've got to say, I'm really glad that I was able to help you on your journey. That's very encouraging and kind to say.
It was honestly helpful to have someone I could talk to, I could ask questions, someone who identified it in me, who was supportive, because I've had people in my life, in my adult life, not in my childhood life, but in professional settings, ask if I've ever been, were you ever diagnosed, or has anyone ever asked you if you're autistic or if you have Asperger's? And the way that they asked it was very confrontational.
Mm,
It was not it was not supportive and kind and curious, and so it was very helpful to have a kind
mm,
and generous and, hey, have you ever considered this? If you have any questions, let me know. I'm here as your friendly neighborhood autistic person.
absolutely, yeah, yeah, and yeah. You came to me, asked me questions about it, and I was happy to answer. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad I could help. Yeah.
I think back to your initial question about seeking a diagnosis, I was not comfortable with self diagnosing. Even though I had started to do research and I'd followed a bunch of people and I was asking you questions, and I know that it's valid, it's very valid within the autistic community, to do a lot of your own research and to take, the RADS-R profiling test and to really self-identify as autistic. For me, I was not comfortable doing that. One, um, because I'm a childhood abuse survivor, and I have struggled my entire life with validating my own experiences,
Mm,
and it would have been very difficult for me to self diagnose and believe my own process of self
Mhm.
diagnosis.
I understand that. Yeah.
Um, and then, two, I also struggle with imposter syndrome, which I know a lot of people do, but especially when I'm entering spaces for the first time, spaces I'm unfamiliar with, I always feel like I don't belong. I'm impeding on other people's spaces. And so I just, that was one of the main reasons that, aside from also really wanting to learn about the type of workplace accommodations I could request if I had an official diagnosis, the type of advocacy I could um, find for myself, and not just in the workplace, but also in society, the types of structures I could set up for myself. Like, I really wanted a professional's help with that. So there were lots of reasons I was looking for official diagnosis and working with a psychologist, but the self-diagnosis journey was one that, for me, didn't feel like the best journey at the time, even though I know it's very valid.
Absolutely. No, and everyone's different. So
Yep. Yep.
we all have our own ways of dealing with it. I kind of the only reason I wanted a professional diagnosis is really because the access to support that you can get
Hmm.
in the UK, if you have a diagnosis, is very, very, very good. Like my family member who has been diagnosed now has access to loads of support.
Hmm.
As to his other family members who live with him, and that is a big help, and even financial support as well. So there's and also I guess there's a bit of legitimacy in saying, "Hey, a doctor's actually said this."
Yes.
Like it's not just me making it up in my head. I don't need that validation
Yep.
personally, but sometimes other people do,
Yep.
and so yeah, and of course with ADHD, there's medication available. So
Yep.
if you get diagnosed, so I'm hoping I get those diagnoses this year, but
Hmm.
we'll wait and see what happens.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Uh,
yeah, exactly. It's everyone's journey, so people shouldn't feel like pressured into
yeah.
getting a formal diagnosis if they don't feel that they need one.
Yep.
Absolutely, but if you feel that you need one, you should do it. That's my perspective, anyway. I mean, it's good.
And there's, I mean, looking back on it, and I think a lot of people have this experience too as adults, there's obviously a lot of benefits to getting your diagnosis younger. There's a lot more resources and financial benefits, not necessarily in the United States, not necessarily for you and your family, depending on what types of disability you qualify for. But especially in the classroom, depending on what you struggle with at school, like there's a huge benefit to getting that diagnosis as early as possible. So receiving it when I was 35 was and has been extremely beneficial to me. But also, I understand why adults who are, you know, 28, 42, 57 don't always feel the need to get the official diagnosis. Whereas a child who's 8 or 10, absolutely, it makes an enormous difference for
It
them.
does.
Yeah.
Absolutely does. Yeah, 100%. And of course, an autistic child will have the intelligence uh, to go and do all their research. And there's age appropriate information. Uh, Parents of autistic children can get support,
Mhm.
training about how to tell their children
Yeah.
to they're autistic and
Mhm.
provide them with information. And that is always that is really good. They didn't have that when I was young, you know,
Yeah.
and uh, and I wish they had, but they didn't. They didn't. So I don't put any blame on anyone for not seeing it because the culture wasn't around then to support it or notice it. More.
Yeah.
If I'd grown up now, we would have been diagnosed quite young. I would have got loads of support. I would have got help at school. I would have got accommodations and stuff. My parents would have been able to help me like it would have been completely different.
Yeah.
And I don't resent that at all because I still managed to find my way there in the end, and
Hmm.
now I can use my experience to help other people. So
Hmm.
yeah, so yeah,
No, it was a different time. And so I was a child primarily. My childhood was the 90s. So 1990 to 2000, I was in elementary school.
mm,
And that was an era where autistic children or autism was a label that was primarily used for the types of and kinds of expressions of autism that are primarily nonverbal or required children to be in a separate classroom.
yeah, exactly. It was
If you were functioning at a level that you could be in a regular classroom, you were not diagnosed as autistic. At
exactly
least where I was living in the United States at the time.
that's true.
Um,
It's the same here. Same here.
yeah,
Yeah, like nobody noticed anything different in me.
yeah,
My sister did because she lived with me, but that was very very different. But nobody else ever did. Yeah, absolutely, it was the same in England. Really, at that time, and I
sad.
was and I was a teenager in the 90s. I love the 1990s, by the way. Great decade. Great decade. Such a good decade. But um, but yeah, like yeah, but thankfully things have moved on in the last 30 years, and things are a lot better now. So
Yeah.
today's kids won't have to deal with all of that stuff that we had to deal with, and
Uh,
before. And that's kind of a relief.
yes. Yeah. I was primarily able to fly under the radar as an autistic kid because my flavor of autism presented as a hyperlexic child and a bibliophile. And so I was just seen as academic and smart.
Yeah, same,
Um,
exactly the same. Like,
so,
absolutely. Like
uh,
I read a lot. I wrote a lot.
yeah.
I was quite academic,
Uh,
and the thing, and also I had subjects that I really hyper focused on and did
yes.
really well at, which was English for me, English
Uh,
literature, English language, and politics actually. And there were other ones where I didn't at all thrive in because I was bored by them and didn't think they were relevant, even though now, like, I understand them completely because I've developed an interest in them. Like, I
yeah.
was never interested in maths. My brain didn't find it logical for some reason, and then science I
Mm,
wasn't interested in because it didn't feel like it was relevant. And I had bad teachers in both of those subjects too,
mm,
which didn't help. But with English, I was always, I don't know, that was always my thing: writing, creating things, telling stories, and politics.
yeah.
Weirdly, like I got hyper focused on politics as a teenager, and I ended up
Yeah.
getting a degree, and majoring in politics. So, and I still have an interest in politics now. So,
Yes, you do.
with my special interest. So, yeah. So I
Uh,
definitely understand that. That's exactly how I presented too. So, uh,
uh,
I absolutely feel that. Yeah.
oh gosh. I would also say, I mean, we can talk about this too in relation to growing up undiagnosed, but also as a girl or socialized as a girl.
Yeah.
Um, but in general, girls continued, especially in the 90s, but continued to remain less frequently diagnosed
Yeah.
compared to their
That's
male
right.
partners.
Mm,
And then if we add ethnicity and race into that conversation, there continues to be even more disparaging numbers there. So
mm,
me, yeah, I know obviously your listeners can't see me at the moment. I'm a white woman, so that increases my odds. Even though I did fly under the radar in my childhood, it increases my odds of getting a diagnosis as a child. Because in general, we're talking about
mm.
um, 30% to 60% higher rates of identification among white children
Mm,
as compared to black children in the United States. And so if you're thinking about, white boys in the US versus black girls in the US, the disparaging numbers there are exhaustive. But when I think about especially, right, this young version of me, young MJ, with her nose in a book and flying through books left and right, um, and the types of things I was praised for and excelled in, there's also this aspect of the things that I didn't excel in, and those aren't academic things. I excelled in all things academic, but what I didn't excel in was being a girl. And so
mm,
for my mother, who was the only person that really cared about me being a girl, thankfully by the 90s, teachers didn't seem to really care that I was a girl. Meaning they didn't, teachers did not work really hard to reinforce gender norms, at least. But my mother really seemed to care that I had very specific characteristics, like being quiet and being calm and being tidy and dainty, and,
mm,
giving me things like pastel colors and soft fabrics and like just feminine, quote unquote, feminine things and girly toys. Um, and especially my toddler personality and my young elementary personality, young grade school personality was the exact opposite of that. I was very loud. I took risks. I made huge messes. I did clean them up. I am very I'm cleanly after the fact, but I like to make huge messes. Um, I like to make a lot of noise at times. I don't like noise in general, but when I want to make noise, I make a ton of it.
mm.
I'm argumentative, like just things, things that just weren't. They did not fit into this box of femininity that my mom had for me, and it was really hard
Yeah.
to, as a child, try to form a sense of identity when
Mm,
this relationship with this woman who was supposed to model whatever for me as a mother had a really strict box that I had to fit into, and I just couldn't. It felt like everything within me was wrong.
mm,
Um, and yeah, it was
yeah,
very difficult. Um, I
mm,
would love to know for you, growing up socialized as male,
mm,
did you feel like over the years, especially when you were younger, toddler, early grade
mm.
school, going into junior high or middle school, did you feel like there was any expectation of you socialized as male that you naturally grew into or did not?
Well, I don't think I really felt that pressure from my parents.
Hmm.
I think my parents were always kind of, we love you how you are, you know. They
Hmm.
never tried to change me. I've always been a highly sensitive person, and that basically means that your body doesn't have the filters that other bodies have
Yeah.
for information and energy. It means you can pick up on things that other people can't pick up on. So for me, being highly sensitive has actually helped me because it helped me understand social cues or learn social cues. I used to be able to pick things up
Hmm.
that people couldn't pick up.
Yep.
Like everyone else who knew the social cues, they couldn't pick up. Like I was able to pick up if two people were connecting and
Mm.
something was going on between something, like some energy was going. I used to pick, and I never said anything because nobody else did. And so I thought, and because being autistic, I'm like, well, nobody else is saying it. I better not say it. This is just me, isn't it?
Yeah, the pattern
So,
recognition.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right. So but I was very very sensitive as a child, very sensitive. In fact, my parents, and I love my parents for this, they actually moved house
Hmm.
because the school that was closest to the house that we had when I was very very small, uh, they thought I would not survive in that school because I was too sensitive.
Oh.
So they sold the house and they bought another house not far away, literally about 5 minutes drive away,
Uh-huh.
which was slightly smaller, but not that much smaller, because that was close to a nice, like secluded little school, which was, kind of safer and more, like, would be more suitable for my emotional needs. I only
I
found
love
that out,
this for you.
I only found that out as an adult as well. Like I didn't know this. My dad just told me as a matter of fact. Like and it wasn't like complaining at all. They didn't complain. And
Mm.
to be honest, it was a nicer school as well. But I remember, yeah, my first teacher said to my parents at the open evening that they needed kid gloves with me because I was so
Mm.
sensitive. And my parents never tried to change that. Uh, I wanted to be good at the things my dad was good at.
Mhm.
Like I wanted to be good at sport. I wanted to be good at all the DIY stuff that he was good at, but I wasn't. And actually, it was harder for me to accept it than it was my parents. And part of it's because I actually like sport anyway. It's one of my special interests, some sports. So I wanted to be able to play it, but I can't, and I've accepted that now. But it was, and the kind of socialized male pressure thing really came at school,
Yeah.
especially because my secondary school, which is from 11 to 18,
Mhm.
uh, uh, I was an all boys school, right? And
Is this the one that Andrew Garfield went to?
no,
Oh.
no, he went to one of our like rival schools. Like he went to a school like it was a prep school. You had to pay to attend,
Oh, he's so
right?
posh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But he's lovely. We love Andrew Garfield. If he was welcome on this show, I'd love to talk to him about grief sometime. If you're listening,
Sorry.
Andrew, please.
Didn't mean to distract you and name drop
No,
there.
no, no. Yeah, Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield grew up in the same town that I did. He went to a theatre school in the town that I grew up in, and he also performed a theatre in the town that I grew up in. And he's
Yeah.
talked about this in an interview that he did like a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
It's on his Wikipedia page too. So I'm not making it up. But yes, it was an all boys school,
Uh,
and it was quite an old school. So it was kind of it was it was a bit like the school you got in Dead Poet Society, in that everyone,
yeah.
all the teachers wore gowns and stuff, and you had to
Mhm.
stand up you had to like when they stand up, and like the prefects wore gowns and
Jeez.
stuff, and like it wasn't, but it was a normal school, it wasn't a prep school, uh, but it was that kind of school,
Yeah, it's so formal.
and yeah, you had to wear blazers and stuff, and like yeah, and we had houses, that we were part of, like, and so all of that, yeah. And I mean, it was in terms of education, it's a good school, but
Mhm.
in terms of preparation for life, it wasn't good for me. I got bullied
Mm.
because I was highly sensitive, because I was quite naive as well in the
Mhm.
ways of the world, because I didn't pick up on social cues. I got taken advantage of, and
Mhm.
I got bullied a lot, and it was emotional bullying more than physical bullying. It was horrible. Uh, and I obviously, because I didn't know I was autistic, I didn't know I was different. I didn't know that, anything about that. Uh, it was hard for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
and being not good at sport when you're in a boys' school as well is not
Yeah. I can imagine.
great, and when people used to open my pencil case and throw it across the classroom,
Mm.
the thing would just fall out everywhere. They used to take my clothes and put them in the shower and stuff when we did sport.
It's weird.
It was those kind of things, and it was horrible. I just didn't like it, and I didn't enjoy it. And I wouldn't, if I had a child, I would not send them to a single sex school. Uh, certainly not to that school. Not that it's a bad school. It's just, for me, it was awful.
Mm.
And yeah, so there was definitely a degree of attempting to socialize me into being like a macho boy, which I've never been,
Mhm.
and I'm still not. Never been one of those guys. I don't. I never like when a lot of my female friends tell me about what guys are like and what regular guys are like. Even my wife, when she tells me what regular, I'm like, really? Like, like why? Like, I never ever got any of that.
Yeah.
That's never been who I am. Like, and I was blissfully, completely unaware of it because I was autistic. And also, I always found it easier to be friends with females
Mhm.
than with than with guys because a lot of guys were like this macho type, typical, and that wasn't me. You know,
Yeah.
it's not even that I was feminine more than masculine. It was more that I was more sensitive, and women are more sensitive than men, especially when they're growing up. Like, the ones that I came into contact with anyway. And I'm not saying that as a general thing. That's not true, but certainly the ones I came into contact with, yeah. Like, I mean, I made friends with a lot of my sister's friends, and
You
some of the
felt more accepted.
I felt more accepted. Yeah, and my
Hmm.
sister was really good with me as well. She spotted I
Oh.
was different from a young age, and we were always quite close. And as teenagers, like her friends, her friends used to hang out. I used to hang out with her friends. You know, we were only like
Hmm.
2 or 3 years apart, so it wasn't anything inappropriate. It was totally fine, and it wasn't anything like that anyway. It was just friends, and a lot of them saw me as an older brother kind of figure as well. And we just got, and I still get on with a lot of my sister's friends, actually. So some of them came to my wedding, so which was great. So yeah, I mean, I was just I don't think I ever wanted to be that masculine kind of guy, and that, like, my parents never pressured me into it. Uh, like, it was only really peer pressure that I got, and eventually I kind of just didn't bother, didn't even care about that either. Because the people who were doing it were bullying me and being nasty to me. So I was like, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of became quite content with me not being like everyone else in that sense, anyway.
Mm.
In terms of gender identity or masculinity or being socialized a certain way, I became quite content with not being that. You know, certainly by the time I was at university, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So yeah. And I'm still completely unaware of a lot of things that typical men do. Even now, and I don't really need to know because I'm not, I don't fit that stereotype. I don't think there's other males in my family of different ages. I don't think they fit that either. My dad does. My dad does fit that stereotype, and he's in his
Mm.
70s, so obviously he was really socialized into that. But yeah, I've never been in that, and I don't feel any pressure to now. Certainly,
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. So in my family, growing up, my mother um, became a single mom essentially when I was 10
right.
and had to run our household and raise my brother and me practically on her own. Her sister never married and lived a very full life as an independent woman. And so I had these two role models, my aunt, my entire life, being a single woman, living a fabulous life of travel and adventure, um, single and non-partnered. And then my mother, starting by age 10, being um, living on her own with the two, my brother and me. And so there were these models of essentially strong women, and yet my mother was still forcing this archaic notion of a fragile, submissive womanhood for me to become. It was just so odd that her and her sister weren't that, and yet she wanted me to become that. Um, I don't know. It was a really odd thing that she and I we did not get along, if you can't tell. She and I argued over it many, many times, but it was some kind of ideal that she held in her head,
Mm,
and it was impossible to live up to because it was the antithesis of my nature. And
mm,
I mean, in general, what that meant was by the time I was in high school, I had officially developed my mask as an
mm,
autistic person, and I'd become quieted. My personality, my spirit, my demeanor.
mm,
Um, Instead of being loud and boisterous and funny and joyful and outgoing and whatever, I'd become quiet and shy and withdrawn. Um,
mm,
and for a number of reasons, aside from being bullied in elementary school and childhood abuse with my mom. And by the
Mm,
time I was in high school, I'd also experienced sexual abuse from two different guys that I was in school with. And so these things like
mm,
really impacted the way
mm,
that I learned to navigate the world. It was no
mm,
longer, I mean, it was never safe for me, but in order to make it somehow safe for me, my brain developed a mask that felt safest to navigate the world undetected and
mm.
um, not problematic.
Yeah, I understand that,
um,
and it's very common. It's more common actually for females to mask, uh, certainly at a young age, than it is for males. Which is why, like we talked about before, that males get diagnosed earlier a lot of the time. Uh, yeah, I mean, now you talked about that, I'm thinking about how I might have learnt to mask as well, because I was going. It wasn't just school that was horrible for me as a child. It was I had a lot of trauma going on at home, and I've talked about this
mm,
on the show before.
yeah,
And there's a I almost saw my mother die in front of me when I was 8 years old,
yeah,
uh, which somehow I dismissed as a traumatic thing. I just made it somehow normalized it. I don't know why. And then there was lots of problems at home, which I won't go into. But my parents were fighting a lot, and I was caught in the middle of that, and I was going through my own stuff, and that never got taken care of, and so there was a bit of neglect, unintentional neglect that happened, and uh, I don't know if I learned to just go along with what people were saying, or whether or not to question things, or not to,
mm,
and not to, I don't know. I don't know. It's something probably I need to explore a bit more. That because certainly I know that I mask, and I know that, and sometimes I do it intentionally. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with it if you know you're doing it, and it's like, and you
yeah,
like, just to keep yourself safe, because part of the autistic experience, and certainly in my experience anyway, is like you need to feel like you're in control and it's your safe, and you have a safe space around you.
yes,
So like I have this thing like where like, and I had this happen last summer. In my old place, I had my sofa set up, I had my TV there, my Xbox, everything with all my movies and stuff, like all there, and that was like that was something that was a safe place.
mm,
I could do what I wanted, and no one could stop me, on my own schedule, and it was I was safe in that space, and I knew
mm,
what was going to happen. I was in control of it. So when I went to America last summer, uh, to stay with my wife in our house, uh, it was like I had a panic attack because I didn't have a safe space in that house, even though it's our house.
yeah,
It's completely safe, and I feel completely safe with my wife. Like I was like, and that's when it clicked for me that that thing at home was actually a safe place. I didn't click that it was that before. Now I know, like wherever I go, I've got to have something like that set up, so where and like, and even with social things, my sister's very very good at this as well. If my sister's coming over to visit, she'll say like, I could be at this time, I could be at this time, I might get delayed, this could happen, this could happen. She gives me all these options that could happen, so that my brain has prepared all these neuro pathways just in case, right?
uh-huh.
And so I don't have meltdowns if she's a bit late, which she often is. Uh, that's a family joke. Uh, because I know that that's a possibility, right?
Yeah,
Like if I'm going out, I try and prepare for every possible eventuality. Like if I'm going bowling, I'm like, yeah, I could be rubbish today. I could just do rubbish today, or I could do
yes,
really well. So I don't have a meltdown when I get frustrated. If I get frustrated, I can't bowl it as I want to bowl it, right? And Yeah, I mean, actually, I mean, even I'll tell this story. Actually, I've never told this story before. On my stag do, we were bowling, and I just couldn't knock a pin over. I was getting
Mm.
really frustrated, and I was starting to get in my head and overthink it, and like it was getting a bit stressful. And my niece FaceTimed me. My sister FaceTimed me, but my niece just said to me, "Uncle James, I love you just as you are, even with your emotional." Well, I can't remember what she said. I can't remember how she said it. Even with your, even with you being, even if you can't bowl.
Oh.
And what happened, of course, is that I got out of my head, and the next ball I got a strike. In the last 3 or 4 balls, I got like 60 points in the last 4 rounds. And I got like about 10 points in the 6 rounds before that.
That's so funny.
Like it was completely like, and that was because I think like safe people, which is my niece is a safe person, like speaking just love and acceptance to who you are,
Mm.
it kind of releases you from the tension in your head,
Yeah.
gets you out of your head, and you don't feel like you have to prove anything anymore.
Yeah.
And then you can just be you.
Totally.
And it's kind of the same. What thing that happened is my wife in well, it's our house. I have to keep reminding myself it's our house. Is that what is that? Okay, once I calmed down, we figured it out, and
Mhm.
we were going to set up a room in the house anyway for me, but we made it a priority. And just having that
Mhm.
space I could go to is just mine, and I was
Mhm.
in control of, it made all the difference. Like, and it's because my wife as well is a safe person who loved me, even though I was having a panic attack. It wasn't so bad because I was loved out of it. Like I was
Yeah.
accepted, even having that moment. Like I wasn't rejected when I was vulnerable. I was accepted,
Yeah.
and that's a powerful thing. I think. Certainly
Yep.
for me, like when you're having those meltdowns or moments of autistic moments where it's just overwhelming, which happens to every autistic person. When you have people that just accept you in that moment and love you anyway,
Yep.
that that shifts everything. Like you can have as an autistic person, you can have safe people who you can decide are safe people, and your body can relax with. Like when I'm with my wife, my whole body just relaxes. I remember when I met her at the airport when I went to visit her last summer, and I remember my whole body, and she said this as well. When we had a hug, the first hug, my whole body just relaxed.
Oh.
Everything just loosened. It's like I've been holding everything in. You know, that is what a safe person can do. And as an
Yeah.
autistic person, it's what a safe person can do as well. It can get you out of your head and just sit with you and let you process, or give you space if you need space as well. And that can make all the difference. Community can make all the difference as an autistic person.
Yeah. I think something you said in this example was actually something the psychologist said with me when I was doing my assessment process, and it's been helpful. Just the concept of the autistic mask and when it is helpful and can be helpful, because I had assumed going into my assessment process that if I was autistic, then one of my priorities would be to unmask myself.
Mm,
And my assumption there being that the autistic mask is bad and is harming me and I need to unmask myself. But the psychologist I work with, thankfully, um, very knowledgeable about all things autism, and really walked me through, why did young MJ create the mask? Let's talk through the environments and the different scenarios where the mask actually helps you maintain your emotional capacity, where the mask makes you feel protected, where the mask actually helps you feel safe. And then where are the moments that you're currently using a mask and you want to unmask because you want to be known. That was a really helpful distinction because I had not realized that there were still environments like the grocery store and the doctor's office and other places where my mask is actually very helpful. It helps the general public interface with me. It helps those interactions go by very quickly.
Mm,
People are receiving me the way they expect to receive me. Um, and I don't get misinterpreted and other things most of the time. Um, but there are those environments like I was originally thinking where I wanted to be known more for my authentic self. So to intentionally lower my mask in those environments specifically was intentional work. And I'm glad I could make that intentional instead of just quote unquote breaking down a mask across my entire life. But that was a process, and I'm glad I could walk through it.
mm, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad too. Like, and I have masks that I use in certain spaces, which are really helpful for me, and allow me to kind of. They almost allow me to go into myself sometimes as well.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no shame in having masks as long as you're aware of them
Yeah,
and know when to take them off and when to put them on. Like, uh, obviously, having a good therapist, psychologist really helps as well.
totally.
So, like the next part was this kind of being undiagnosed as an adult,
Mm.
and like the kind of holistic interpretation of arrogance as well, and the kind of the headstrong professional and the quiet academic.
Oh, yeah. So, being undiagnosed as a child was one thing, and a very common experience for women who are autistic. Um, Moving into adulthood, you know, one statistic that we have on autistic women is that approximately 80% of autistic women are still undiagnosed by age 18. So they go into adulthood still undiagnosed. So I was one of those women. Um, I transfer quickly into this quiet academic kind of person in college. I keep my nose in my book. I don't really raise my hand. I don't make a lot of noise. I don't make a lot of friends. I make small groups of friends. I make one best friend. Um, Thankfully, I still have her as my best friend. I really didn't know if I could do that. Um, and
Yeah,
when I graduated college and moved into the workforce, that's when it got difficult for me, particularly because in the university setting, you're encouraged to ask questions, you're encouraged to think critically, you're encouraged to essentially debate a bit. So these little bits of my personality are permitted, and professors reward them, right? The large vocabulary is rewarded. So these things are good things. So then I enter the workforce, and I am a high school and middle school English and literature teacher. And I also develop curriculum. And I'm a very passionate advocate for my students. Obviously, as an autistic person, undiagnosed at this point, but still, I'm autistic. I have a strong sense of justice and injustice, and there's lots of injustice that happens in schools. Um, so I rub some people the wrong way.
mm,
When I ask questions because of my flat effect sometimes,
yeah,
and because of my monotone voice at times, and especially because of the large vocabulary that I wield, those questions come across as rude and arrogant. I'm asking things above my stature. I'm trying to take people's jobs. I'm questioning things that it's not my place to question, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
yeah,
right? Um, when my intention is I see a problem, I want to fix it, I want to make things better, I'm trying to help kids, I'm right, but complete misinterpretation. Some people see me as, uh, at best, a hero. Otherwise, just they just are inspired by me because I have a lot of confidence and I'm achieving a lot as a young person. But yeah, I really rubbed a handful of people the wrong way. specifically a handful of people in power at a number of institutions.
Mm,
And I can never really figure out why. Um, until I got my diagnosis, I could never really figure out why.
mm. That makes a lot of sense. Like I'm kind of the same in the sense of that I just speak my mind. I'm just honest about it, and sometimes I don't realize how that comes across, and then, and then it can upset people and annoy people, and because and I didn't realize that, and sometimes when there's something that I'm passionate about or it's something that I know that I believe I'm an expert in, something like politics,
Mm,
I'm like I am completely convinced of my rightness of something,
mm,
especially if it's a social justice thing, because of as has been talked about elsewhere in another episode of this show, justice sensitivity is something that autistic people have.
yeah.
We're very very sensitive to injustice and feel strongly about it. Not that other people don't. It's just that there's a
Yep.
particular response that autistic people have that is slightly different and slightly stronger in a different kind of way. And it's that directness of like this is wrong. I don't understand why this doesn't why they don't just change it. Like I've even had these conversations with family members of like, well, it's just wrong. Like do something about it. And yeah, but they're not going to. Like it's never going to change. And I'm like, why? Why don't you just change it? Like it's wrong. Like, you just, it's really obvious. Like the like solution. It's like why don't you just do this? It's so simple. You know. And it's like, and I like that part of myself actually because there's a sense, there's almost a naivety there of like, like yeah, this is just to me like justice is very simple, and like and that and there's no reason why not to do things right, and I kind of like that quality in myself, like, but yeah, like the whole kind of upsetting people because you're quite direct. I didn't realize that, like,
Yeah.
and I don't realize how I came across that way, like,
Yeah.
and I don't. I've always felt guilty that somehow I fall out with people sometimes, and like over in debates and stuff like that. But now I realize, oh no, this is just because like this is how you communicate, and this is how you come across, and maybe you didn't even see that you came across that way, you know.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a thing. That's definitely a thing with autistic people.
And I will add, so two little statistics to throw in here. Um, first is a statistic about suicide among the autistic population.
Hmm.
Um, Autistic women and female presenting people are 8 times more likely or at the risk of suicidality compared to non autistic women. And then compared to autistic men who are less than twice at risk than their non autistic counterparts. So 8 times as likely versus a little less than 2 times as likely compared to men.
Hmm.
Um, and then the second point there, having to do with masking. Recent studies, this comes from a study in 2017, showing that the length of time spent masking has an adverse effect on mental health outcomes. Um,
Hmm.
Contrasting with social acceptance and receiving diagnosis being the reason autistic adults felt that they do not need to mask. So, your point earlier about how we know that autistic women and girls felt the need to often mask earlier than autistic boys. It's a whole thing for me when I think about the higher suicidality rate among autistic women. And I think about my own experience, having to mask earlier potentially, um, particularly because of how girls are raised as quote unquote female. But then also, when we get into the workforce or when we get into academia, but especially the workforce,
Hmm.
the speaking your mind, going after what is right, or
Hmm.
putting your ideas out there, or speaking up, or these things that really rubbed people the wrong way about me. If I were a male, depending on the environment, could still get me in trouble or could get me a promotion. It depends on the environment, right? Like for when I think about as the female experience is often that she is bossy, she is annoying, she is like all of these very negative things because she speaks up, because she doesn't shut up, because she, right? Whereas oftentimes in the workplace, men or male presenting people in the workplace who speak up and who put their ideas out there are sometimes rewarded for that behavior. Not always. Um, Obviously, in your examples, you were not. So it really does depend on your workplace and where you've been. But it's just interesting. It's interesting who, in what scenarios and what environments, receive applause, receive recognition, receive support, and in what environments they don't, and they're downcast or rejected simply for having an opinion. And it's harsh.
Mm, yeah, that's definitely something of that of the female experience, isn't it? And like, I mean, even in just society as a whole, generally, even with non-autistic women,
Yeah, yeah,
speaking your mind and like somehow gets treated differently, which
yeah.
it shouldn't do. Um, and
Uh,
because everyone should be free to speak their mind without getting treated differently.
that's
Uh,
true.
but yeah, no, I think that's important to share because I think that obviously there's a lot of autistic women and or female presenting anyway who will be listening. So I think just sharing that experience will resonate, and I think also for the autistic men, male presenting, who are listening, just to understand that experience that autistic women can have is important as well. For people like me, that raising awareness of those kind of things is really really important,
Mm.
especially when it's like in a social situation or in the workplace, which happens a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah, 100%. Uh, and that kind of brings us to like the final kind of area that we were going to talk about, uh, in that your life since your diagnosis, because
yeah.
and I've seen this at first hand, kind of as your friend, and it's been great to see. But I'm excited for you to share it with everyone else.
It's been I was about to say sunshines and daisies, but I mean sure, it's not all been good things, but um there have been a lot of freeing moments and a lot of healing that's happened since my diagnosis. The first immediate thing that happened was that I quit my job, which had a huge quality of life impact on me. I was working a very specific kind of job that I was very good at, but that was sucking the life out of me because it was not meant for an autistic brain and an autistic life. Specifically, the company I worked for, it was just not going to be able to make the kinds of accommodations that I needed to thrive. And I did not have the emotional or mental capacity at the time to negotiate with them for any kind of concession and accommodation that they could maybe make. Um, I'm sure they would have been willing to make some accommodations. It's not that they were, completely incapable of doing that. But I know all of the accommodations I would have asked for, and I know they couldn't have made all of those. And I really was at such burnout that I needed all of those and more. So I just quit my job. I really needed to take a complete break from work for a while. And that alone was a huge weight off of my shoulders. Aside from that, I spent some time in therapy, really walking back through some of my key childhood, adolescent, and adult life moments that I've never really fully understood, and that I haven't prior to this been able to work out from a panic disorder or CPTSD framework. Um, and it's really helped me to understand myself as an autistic person and reprocess those moments. Like, what did it look like for that allistic person to interact with me and not understand me or misinterpret me and my behavior and my intention?
Mm.
Um, and then, even more so, it's been really helpful and healthy for me to holistically understand myself as an autistic person with debilitating mental and physical health conditions, like CPTSD, panic disorder, autism, but then also, I have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, fibromyalgia. I have a number of compounding physical and mental struggles. And so being able to accommodate all of those throughout my day while understanding and accommodating how my autistic brain is navigating the world around me. Because that was like the missing piece for me prior to my diagnosis. Um, and it was the thing that was really causing so much the autism piece that was missing. That was the piece it was causing so much anxiety all the time because I didn't understand why I was always on edge or always emotionally drained or other things prior to my autism diagnosis. Since I've had my diagnosis, I've been able to make changes in my environment or my rhythms in my day to really ease a lot of the regular triggers and other things that cause me um, anxiety and stress and, drain my emotions and whatnot.
Mm. And as your friend, we talk on Zoom or whatever quite a lot.
Mhm.
And I've seen over the last year, and I've seen you in person in the last year because you came to
Yeah.
my wedding, and which was great. But I've noticed in the last year how much more energy you have and how much
Yeah.
more yourself you look, and like it's been so great to see you almost liberated,
Yeah.
and more comfortable in your body and have more energy and uh, more yourself, you know. So yeah, and so there's definitely been a positive outcome from that diagnosis and the decisions that you made as a result of it, for sure.
Agreed. That's so encouraging. I I love to hear that you can see a difference.
Absolutely.
I do feel more me. And I would say one last big difference in my personal life has been prior to the diagnosis, I felt this huge internal pressure to make friends. I moved to a new city last year, and so I didn't have any immediate friends in this new city that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I felt this pressure that I'd put on myself to make new friends in my new community. And I have done that. I've gotten to know some of my neighbors, I've made a couple friends, but I think it was this sense of this is what allistic people do. This is what normal people do. They go out and they make like 20 friends or whatever. And so I felt this pressure. Since getting my diagnosis, I've really, kind of what you just described, I've really come into my sense of self and accepted this is who I am. This is how my body feels. This is how comfortable I am. And I feel at home with me. I feel at home with my partner. I feel fulfilled, and I accept the fact that I feel fulfilled with all the friendships I have, including my friendship with you. I don't feel the need to go out and make 30 new friends in my
Yeah.
city.
Great, isn't it?
It's
It's so
so
great
freeing.
when you don't feel like you have to do that anymore. Like
Ah, ah,
I've got healthy community, and it's real. Yeah, it's online. Some of it's in person,
ah.
and I'm content with that. I don't feel the need to have a billion friends.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that when my family member eventually talks to me about their autism, uh, because I know they struggle with making friends. One thing I will say to them is like, when you're autistic, you have less friends, but the friendships you do have are a lot deeper and more meaningful. Like, because I don't
Mm,
have like tons of friends, but I have the friendships I do have are really meaningful, and
Mm.
they're safe people, and I know they care about me, like you, right?
Mm.
And I don't feel the need to. I'm not. I like so like most autistic people. I don't like the kind of chit chat kind of thing at parties. I don't like big parties. You know, I always want to go home early, and that's partly because I'm an introvert and partly because I'm autistic.
Yeah.
Like, and I just don't feel the pressure to do that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I've got my group of people that are safe people. My wife, you know, my immediate family on both sides, on my mum's side and my dad's side, and I've got close friends, and I've got like, and so I'm okay. And I don't feel the need to go out and just make friends. And no, it's quite liberating. It's quite liberating,
Hmm.
like you say. So thank you for sharing this story with us. It's really powerful, and I think it'll be really encouraging and inspiring to a lot of people. So thank you.
Yeah.
And
Could I ask you a question?
yes, you can.
This was something that my therapist asked me after my diagnosis. If you could go back in time and talk to your child self, whatever age that is, but like pre 10 years old, and say something to them knowing that they're autistic. And you don't have to tell them that they're autistic, but
No,
something that would help them along their journey. What would you tell them?
what would I've loved to have heard at that age?
Hmm.
I would have told them that it's going to be difficult at times,
Hmm.
but but, but that he's precious and important and loved, and eventually it's going to be okay.
Oh,
I've done
I
this
love
kind of
that.
thing actually. I do IFS therapy, so I've
Hmm.
had to do like reparenting scenes with my younger
Yes.
self before. So
Yeah.
I've done something like this before, actually, like in my brain.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's probably what I would say to my younger self, and I give him a big cuddle as well, just so that like you know he's not a doesn't he doesn't feel alone,
Mm.
and maybe I tell him it's okay to cry as well,
Yes, it is.
you know. So yeah, Phew. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to do that, but
Sorry.
thank you, thank you for allowing me to do that. That was lovely.
Yeah, of course.
So where can people connect with you?
Oh, people can find me. I'm on Instagram at MJ Weissen, and I'm on Blue Sky, also MJ Weissen.
Yeah,
That's about it these days.
cool. Yeah, same. Like I still go on Twitter a little bit because I've got friends there, but Blue Sky and Instagram, yeah,
Yeah,
they're my jams. Uh,
yeah.
for interacting with friends and people. Yeah,
Hmm.
100%. Well, thank you, NJ. I'm sure we'll have you back on the show one day to talk about something. I don't know.
Yep.
There's so many things we can talk about.
It's always a good time.
But yes, it is. It always is a good time. But thanks for coming on, and thanks for listening, everyone.